We're live. Hi, and welcome to our podcast. This week, I have an amazing guest here with us today, which I'm sure you guys will learn a lot from, and he has a lot to offer. We have personally had a lot of conversations on human resource, on how AI is going to change the things, how HR tech is going to evolve in the future. So I thought, why not have a conversation with which I can share further with our audiences and take up questions. So, Parth, be ready that we will have some questions coming in your way once we basically host this podcast and kind of go
Sure.
live with it. Amazing. So, a quick introduction about Parth here. He's an accomplished product and strategy professional. He has over 10 years of experience in helping SaaS companies scale and grow internationally. And this is precisely, I had a conversation with him that how has, kind of the system changed? How has ecosystems evolved with pre AI, now with AI? And how can SaaS companies grow now and how they were growing a couple of years back? He is currently the director at ADP Ventures, where he's been investing in and scaling startups across ADP's businesses. He was previously a consultant with Bain and an investment banker with Nomura. So, Parth, welcome to the podcast. And without much wasting any more time, here is my first question. We talked about human capital management industry, and I understand it is a niche segment. I did a couple of research and I realized that it is a niche industry within B2B SaaS industry. So can you tell us more about what all it entails and what it basically encapsulates in essence?
Yeah, firstly, Swati, so glad to be here. I have like 100% engagement rate with your content on LinkedIn. So the interviews that you do are so informative. So glad to be here and give back. Um, the human capital industry is actually, you're right, it's a nice niche within the B2B SaaS industry. There are so the various subsectors within that, and you'd be surprised how many there are. Number one is just like human resource information systems, like those that manage employee records, do payroll, do benefits administration like insurance. So I think ADP, SAP, maybe even Workday come to mind when you think about that. And then there's also, of course, outsourcing. A company or business could end up outsourcing all of their HR tasks, and that is called a PEO. It's called a co-employer model. Um, then there's another subsector of talent management, like hiring and retiring and managing people, hiring them through applicant tracking systems, doing their background checks, you know, having learning and development content like on LinkedIn, doing performance reviews, succession planning. What if this employee leaves? What are the future roles or future leadership transitions that may have in my team? And one of the CEOs that I work with of a company just moved on to become board member now. So I'm sure he had done succession planning since the last 3 years. Um, but another subsector is workforce management, like time and attendance. So, if a contractor comes in, they need to punch in their time, they leave their employer, they got to punch out. There's leave and absence management. Someone's taking an extended leave, for example, just after childbirth. And then a fourth or fifth segment here is the employee experience segment, where think about your experience being at a company. Are you having a good time? Are you having a bad time? How do we communicate this to your leadership through NPS surveys or other surveys? Um, how does your company intranet work? How do you communicate internally? And there are HR companies that solve for that too, to create messaging platforms and intranet social platforms. Um, of course, especially valid in the US, there is compliance, labor law compliance. There are so many local laws, state laws, federal laws. There are laws at every level that need to be complied to, and there's a lot of complexity around it. Um, there is health and safety, so like workplace safety tools to track incidents, meet regulatory compliance. Um, and lastly, there are also self-service platforms. So an employee, if they want to raise a leave request, if they want to change their personal information like the direct deposit, if they want to schedule time off. Um, yeah, and I think the major players in this industry include ADP or Paychecks. So, for example, they are the established top players, right? that go all the way from small to businesses to enterprises. There's Intuit that has developed an entire ecosystem around it, like QuickBooks, MailChimp, and the larger accounting CFO ecosystem. There's Workday, which is more modern. It started just maybe 2 decades ago with HR-based platform, which it's very enterprise focused. It's had a hard time scaling in mid and small businesses. There's Gusto, which is focused only on the small business market. And then each player like Gusto and Rippling have taken up small shares of the market and have certain expertises. Like Rippling is into integrations, so it connects really well with the larger HR ecosystem. But yeah, those I think were the major players in the HCM market. Um, any questions about that?
Yes, a lot, I would say. So essentially, Parth, what I understand, you kind of described a big HR department for me, because if I'm thinking instead of tech, I'm thinking people when you were talking about all the different aspects of HCM. And I could think of people who are responsible for hiring. Then there's a team which is responsible for employee engagement. And then there's a separate team who's looking with legal into compliances, into payrolls and stuff like that, right? Now, how do you see people and tech coming together in an organization? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Of course. So people and tech, that's basically our domain, right? People, tech, and historically, it's been a very manual process where
Mhm.
people pay their employees, small business owners pay their employees using checks, and they keep a tab on an Excel or even on paper notes that this is the person I've paid, this was their shift, and they do even time scheduling on shifts. Okay, employee A came in at 7 a.m., left at 5 p.m. And ADP saw an opportunity in this in the 60s and started what they call their automatic data processing or automated paychecks, had time scheduling opportunities and products as well. Now, the thing is that even today, a lot of small businesses, you'd be surprised how many small businesses in the US, and I think 90% or more small businesses in India, have no technology that backs up their HR teams. And that makes them inefficient. Not only inefficient, that makes their owner, the business owner, not prioritize the task that they are the best at, or their core competencies, which could be selling the product, which could be creating a product, which could be, you know, liaising or servicing consumers, and they end up spending people who have no expertise in HR end up spending tens of hours a week doing HR. So people tech coming together and re-energizing this ecosystem, giving back to it, making sure that decision makers like business owners invest their time in the most important places is extremely important. And with you mentioned AI, I know it's a buzzword, but with that coming in, it'll only become easier for small business owners and the larger economy to focus on what is most important and most productive and outsource all these tasks to either tech or to PEOs, which I mentioned initially.
Right. Right. That's actually very interesting. Now, you mentioned business owners in between, that business owners kind of need to, like in order for them to be best at what they do, they need to have at least the people management side of it managed. Now, that got me thinking that for smaller companies, for startups, HR investment and putting in money into business practices takes a backseat. They're like, oh, let me put in some more money into performance marketing. Let me put in some more money into getting leads in this event. And somewhere the budgeting around HR tech kind of takes a backseat. I mean, like that's a reality. I don't want to make any bigger claims. I don't have the numbers supporting it, but that's just how we talk about it. But so if you can help our viewers in understanding that while they're scaling the company, see, like somebody who's like at the first 1 million in ARR, then growing to a 5 to 10 million in ARR, and then further increasing to 100 million plus, and then moving towards that the unicorn mark, and then getting listed. How can they see? How can they keep integrating HCM in a scaled manner, in a laddered manner, so that it is not a much of a cost impact on them? Or do you feel that no, you got to do it from the start? What's your take on it?
What a great question. So The question is, how do we keep integrating HCM in a laddered manner? When do we start, right?
Should we even do
And
it or not? Should we even do
yeah,
it or not? Should we like do it on the in the start only, or should we do it
correct,
in a laddered way?
correct.
How would you recommend founders to think about it when they have a startup and they have a mid-sized company and then hopefully an enterprise someday in their hands? But that comes after 10 years. The market changes by then. But let's just talk about startups and
Correct.
mid-market segment.
So just like a startup could grow from one employee to 1,000 employees to 1 million, similarly, HR requirements also grow in that same proportion. Now, the good news here is that the investment that you need to make in HR to manage all those operations also grows at a similar rate. It's not the price that you the cost that's going to be on a business will be proportional to one employee. So when do we start? I think there are a lot of geographic differences in when a startup gets that HCM support, and that's to do a lot with just the cost of labor. I think in the US, hiring labor to manage your HR tasks is actually quite expensive, and it might be easier to for a small business owner to just use technology rather than hire someone to do these tasks. And this technology is commoditized. There are so many players in the market that offer HR tech software to do this. But let's take an example, right, of small, mid-size, and enterprise clients and their requirements and how they can scale.
Yes.
Smaller companies have like very low requirements, significantly lower than mid-size. They are focusing on fundamental labor laws like minimum wage, workplace safety. Uh, a business owner here is an HR admin, like I said. So when I'm thinking about ADP or another HR tech company, they got to create a very simple product that is easy to use for someone who doesn't understand HR. And also, these business owners need to go in, use your product in the least possible time, which is a big change from what other tech companies do. They want you to spend maximum time on your product.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and most startups here or tech-enabled businesses want to avoid the headache of compliance policies, want to avoid the heartache that comes with, hey, maybe I don't know X, maybe I don't know Y. How do I, do I need to ask Chat GPT on how to navigate these labor laws? No, a SaaS-based software would do it for you. And I feel, especially in the US, employees, even a company with one employee, should start using an ACM system. When you go up market to, let's say, the mid market segment, let's say between 50 to maybe 1,000 employees, these have more established and structured HR policies. So they have structured ways to implement employee onboarding, to do performance reviews, to send their HR handbook to their employees, which is also a legal requirement. And of course, develop their employees, do learning. And the policies that you need at this stage need to begin to reflect a more diverse workforce and need to make sure that employee engagement and retention is high. Otherwise, you might have a big problem on your hands with employees with bad morale. But when I go mid market, these softwares are more like ADP Workforce Now or Paycor or Paylocity. And what I covered before with startups, it's more like ADP Run. It's more like Gusto or Bamboo HR. Um, but when I travel even further up market to enterprises, maybe with more than 1,000 employees, there is significant emphasis on HR policies, regulatory compliance, because there are multiple jurisdictions here. There are federal laws, local laws, state laws. And here, again, an intricacy is that these solutions are customizable. They are
Mm-hmm.
customized often. So if I'm an enterprise, I look at Workday and ADP and SAP no longer as just my vendors. They're not vendors, they are partners. They help you make your workforce more productive. There's a lot of custom implementation, sometimes even product builds that these partners are doing for you. Um, there is a very large volume of data, employee data across all
Absolutely.
departments. So they are also often higher priced. For example, could be in the $300, $500 range per employee. Uh, and for example, Workday. It Let's take another example, right? In a partnership in an enterprise, they could hire Workday to do their HR. They could
Mm-hmm.
hire ADP to pay their employees. They could hire SAP to do ERP operations like finance, procurement,
Mm-hmm.
and Salesforce to manage customer relationships and to have it tagged back to their HR workers, and for to have ADP to pay them. So this tech stack to work together and communicate becomes really important. Uh, did that answer
Absolutely.
your question, Swati?
Yes, completely. I'm very satisfied with my answer. In fact, now I'm thinking that we usually discuss the problem of tech stack in marketing and sales because there are so many tools out there, something to send an email, something for a call, another one for a call recording analysis so that your scripts can be better. And we struggle with that problem of a multi tech stack. However, I never thought that HR space would also have a multi-tech stack. I always had this belief that there's a singular tech that you are working in a company. But you put forward a very beautiful point wherein you said that organizations do use multiple stacks, even while looking at considering HCM in general, human capital management, there are multiple stacks. So, can you give me an example as such of that, or would you prefer? What would your preference be as an organization? Multiple tech stacks or a singular tech, because singular tech can solve the problem.
Yeah, great question. So it depends on what level of maturity you're at. When
Mm-hmm.
I'm younger, I would definitely prefer a single tech stack that communicates with each other seamlessly. I don't need to spend cycles, months
Yes.
implementing stuff, right? And that in the mid market, Intuit has basically that value proposition, right? That
Mm-hmm.
they get companies to do their accounting through QuickBooks. Um, then they
Right.
sell payroll through QuickBooks. That and we're
Mm-hmm.
already doing your accounting. This does communicate seamlessly. Then they bought Mailchimp that does marketing for them. So they've expanded their use cases in that market and is growing that way. But when I go more upmarket, it ends up being also kind of a pricing decision and also a core competency decision. Um, you can't go wrong, for example, with ADP doing your payroll. Like if
Yes.
something goes wrong, you're the HR admin. No one will say anything to you. Like you did not make a
Mm-hmm.
bad decision.
Yeah.
And similarly for SAP managing your ERP software, right? They are just like the biggest, clearly vendors in the field. Um, so it ends up being and also in that enterprise segment, multi-month implementations are quite common actually
Mm-hmm.
to optimize for efficiency. So it could be it's very common basically. So it depends on what level
Right.
of maturity you're at.
Yes, definitely. And multiple tech stack has its own problem of loss of data intelligence while you're transferring data from one system to another. So what you're telling me in a sense is that there's a single tool which kind of has done partnerships with multiple smaller tools and gives you a seamless kind of experience. And then you can have something if you're bigger, if you're an enterprise, then you can get something seamless created, custom created for yourself. Having
Correct. And
said all,
also
yeah, no, no,
also
please.
there are marketplaces, right? There are API marketplaces for each
Okay.
of these tech stacks. So Gusto, for example, has an API marketplace. Stripling has an API marketplace, and they help you connect different tools together. And they might
Mm-hmm.
charge you a small fee for that as well. Um, so it's very common for even in the down market segment for different tools to be used depending on what geographies those tools serve, what compliance
Yes.
requirements they serve. If you're in multiple jurisdictions, some tools have a blocker that they just can't serve you.
Yes.
But yeah, loss of data is a very good point that you brought up, Swati, and I think the ecosystem does all it can to prevent that, but of course it ends up happening at some level.
Yeah, I hear you completely. There was a question that came to my mind while we were discussing, and you talked about the different parts of HCM. Where do you think the whole? So obviously, acquisition it was an important piece, and I would want to talk about that because till now we've been talking from the point of view of the employer, basically the person who's hiring. thinking about from the point of view of the candidate. So, my first question on that piece is, what all things should a candidate be mindful of while applying for a job in a company which does not just rely on people for managing acquisitions, but also has a very healthy tech enabling acquisition for them?
What do you mean tech enabling acquisition?
In
Like
the
an
sense,
ATS?
maybe absolutely an ATS or maybe like a video interview kind of a thing, which I'm hearing a lot of things about, basically an AI studying the video and then analyzing whether it's a good fit, not a good fit, and how well
Makes
should
sense.
your LinkedIn be, what your presence is. I mean, like, I would love for you to talk about what are the things that somebody who's getting hired needs to be mindful of, needs to consider, so that they don't get flagged in the system itself. Like, you don't make it to the person only if you get flagged by the system.
Correct. Yeah. I heard about that a lot. Like I've been hearing about that a lot. Especially nowadays the economy is especially the white collar economy isn't doing so great. I have a lot of people who I know who were recently laid off, and of course there are so many there's so much technology being used in applicant tracking in hiring that you
Mhm.
got to wonder, right, what these tools do.
Yes.
And one thing I would say could if everyone should do is if they ever find themselves in such a situation is use yourself online tools that go through your resume and edit it to counteract these keyword-based ATSs that, of course, job seekers and candidates dislike. So, an example of such a career service or a career outplacement tool would be Bright Jump. So it can, for example, help you customize resumes for different jobs. I believe they have like 3 million jobs on the site already. They can help you track applications that you make across companies. Um, they can also help you write a cover letter. Of course, the AI does it, not a human. And they have, for example, on-demand preparatory courses that help you apply for jobs or ace interviews, do one-on-one career coaching through platforms, or even help you negotiate pay if you're laid off. So there are a lot of online tools that help you do that. But if I just zoom out, right? What else can candidates do apart from just use
Yes.
online tools? You could network. You should network. You should talk to your friends at companies you want to be in. Um, for larger corporations, only apply with an employee referral. Otherwise, don't apply.
Absolutely.
I feel like recruiters are so bogged down with the increased volume of
Mhm.
applications that they end up just seeing employee referrals. Right? It's the most effective way to filter out candidates. Um, and I've also come across people who've just like directly emailed the CEO or CFO or the general manager of a business unit that they wanted to join. Um, so if you, for example, hear them speak on Swati's next pod and you like the company, just like email them and with your takeaways and how you can add value to their company. But
Yeah.
of course,
And okay, so I'll pipe in here and say, so for ADP guys, Parth is the person. And please continue, Parth.
Swati, you brought me in a tough spot here. But lastly, I think you could also like upskill. You obviously need to upskill, right? That's the
Yes.
obvious part. Do courses on Coursera in your field. Go get a master's degree because just like the economy runs in cycles,
Mhm.
it's in a for white collar workers, it's in a downturn right now, but it will improve within a year or so. It's just a cycle, guys. So go get a master's degree if you have that luxury. I know not everyone does, but
Right.
and upskill yourself.
That's brilliant. I mean, like, I think this part of the podcast is something that the viewers gonna love, because uh, even people hiring need to be hired. So love your answer, and really like the way you've kind of talked about the tech aspect of things. That what do these ATSs? They look at a lot of keywords, and there are tools out there. And I think the beautiful takeaway is that match that JD with the resume and help in that resume and cover letter writing, so that you can CV kind of stands out. Coming to the referral point, and like you said, that in enterprises, you should get higher, or like you basically should go into the referral. There's another thing that I recently had a conversation with a senior HR professional, and they said that when we hire for uh, executive level and maybe senior management level, like VP, EVP, VP above, I can say, at that level there are only fixed number of candidates that you kind of see, because it's very industry specific. If I'm in media, I know that these are the top people, because they've done something really crazy in the last 5 6 years, and I want their playbooks, I want how they cracked it, and I want to hire them. So but when that happens, there's a so like here the demand supply gap thing kind of changes. Like it's these guys who kind of in demand. There's a lot of employer ghosting that happens at this time. So we talked about employee ghosting, where an HR does not respond back, and which is a very commonly talked about topic on LinkedIn. So I would not touch base on that, because I think we've talked too much about it. I want to talk with you, Parth, about employer ghosting, wherein candidates, because it's a hot industry, and I can vouch for AI for right now. So developers who can really develop products on AI are really product guys, and engineers who can do coding on
Mm-hmm.
AI and build AI features are really in demand right now. And this is where a lot of employer ghosting is happening. So what is your take on that? How can companies, like, and usually it's not just about money for these guys, it's a lot more than that. So what can employers do in such case? What can HR folks do? And is there any tech support there that they can kind of work with? I can think of only MailChimp sending those regular emails, but who's reading emails? So, like, what are your thoughts on that? Employer ghosting. How real is
Yeah,
that, and how can you tackle it?
this is a pretty cool topic. Swati, I'll be honest, the first time I heard about employer ghosting was through your LinkedIn channel itself, and you made a video about it. Uh,
Yes.
like, initial thoughts are that in the recruitment process, when a company is hiring someone, they go through an ATS, resume drop, do interviews before they extend an offer. No, actually, they extend an offer, and once the candidate accepts the offer, um, there's a step there that's an optional step, that's of background screening,
Mm-hmm.
that requires a candidate to send their social security number. It's a larger, slightly, candidates see that as an invasive process.
Mm-hmm.
Now candidates see it like that, right? So if a candidate does accept the offer and start a background check, I think their likelihood to go back to that company becomes extremely high, because they've
Mm-hmm.
bit the bullet. They've clearly gone all in here, and started that background screen. So I feel like that optional step, if employers add it, can be really beneficial. Not only in making sure that the employee is motivated, but also to check their criminal history, their employment history, to make sure that the employee isn't lying on anything. They have good referrals. So I would say that that could be a good way to make sure for the employers that an employee comes back.
Makes sense. I think it's very interesting, and probably easing out the whole background check process, because I've had some really, because it is usually outsourced to an agency of sorts as well.
Correct.
And
Correct.
now I'm just thinking about it. This agency is not trained, and they're not probably as soft skill trained as the company that I'm joining. And a lot of good candidates can drop off at that time. I've had the weirdest of experience with Disney, when somebody, they have to take a photo of your gate or something. It was very funny. So they have this thing wherein, you have to, like, in your permanent address or wherever you're staying. And it was a work from home policy thing added, by the way. So they never had it initially, but now that you're doing work from home, so now you had to do this thing wherein you to stand at the gate and somebody would come and take your photograph.
Wow.
It was just weird. I mean, this guy's telling me, and I'm like, "Are you even real? Are you for real? Is this not? Is this some, or is this some kind of a scam?" Because a lot of times, data gets leaked, and you get these calls, and that I need, I need to come here. And this guy actually made me stand at the gate, and the number plate had to be visible. So it
That's
was a very,
hilarious.
yeah, it was a work from home policy requirement from Disney's side, which is pretty cool also. But at the same time, It was crazy. And I mean, had it not been Disney, probably I would not have gone through the trouble, to be very honest. But yes, I think I hear you. And there's something very interesting that companies can expect, with these third party vendors that they tie up with, because it's usually that background checks, better experience for the employees. Having said that, coming to the point, and I'm gonna like quote you on that when you said, I have a few friends who lost their jobs recently when you're applying again. So quoting you there, even I've had a lot of friends recently, and especially with the top tech players firing entire departments, and as we lovingly call them, FANG in the financial world, which is Meta, Amazon, Meta,
Yeah.
actually Facebook. That's what FANG stands for. It gives me it's pretty weird, FANG. I mean, like a snake biting or something. Anyways, not discussing that, but yeah. So these companies firing entire departments and saying, "Oh, we don't need the department anymore," firing a lot of their staff, and then people. At least I can say a lot of Indians working there, really getting worried that I'm on the visa, and if it expires and I don't get another job, I will have to shift my entire family back, and the kids are settled there. It's a very scary space to be in, but at the same time, it has started this trend in mid-market segment specifically, and even startups. But startups, I won't really challenge them because it's a lot about funding. That it's okay to hire and fire. It's okay to hire at a higher than industry average price point and pay a lot more, play crazily to an employee, and then fire if it doesn't really work out, right? Because you've invested so much into it, and you're like, oh, it's now I don't see the ROI anymore. What's your thought on this trend? Is it really getting picked up? Do people, and how difficult is it to really find a job once you get fired? Because how do you even explain that to the employer? Was it because my company decided to fire a department, or was it because it was basis your performance? Because a lot of times firing happens, people, the next person that you're going to applying for a job, they automatically assume, oh, they must have fired people who are not performing, right? How do you prove that? So how to tackle this bit, and what's your
Yeah.
take on paying more than industry average and having this hire and fire mentality?
Correct. I'll take your second question first. It's absolutely fine if someone is fired. Companies, especially in New York, don't see it in a bad light at all. It's very common. Layoffs have been happening for a while. It is not difficult to get a job back. In fact, if you're fired right now, that just means I can employ you starting tomorrow. Uh, so that could, in many cases, be a competitive advantage to not have a notice period. Um, and I don't see it ever as maybe you weren't performing, especially over the last 2 years since hiring has really started, right? There could be a variety of reasons that you're no longer with your previous employer. Uh, Now coming back to big tech and FANG companies, um, yeah. So I think that they could have shown more responsibility. There was clearly a hiring surge during the pandemic when demand for tech services increased, and they hired a ton to build products extensively when the interest rates were so low, 1-2%, where the Fed stimulated the economy, pumping cash into it. They could build for cheap. Fang and other tech companies hired like crazy. But as soon as demand normalized, this became unsustainable. Um, some experts also say that these companies may have wanted to corner the best talent, the best
Mhm.
engineers, not let the competitors have them.
Oh.
So, or it could just have been incompetency in planning, right? All across the board, except, for example, Apple. Apple laid off only a few hundred employees, where Amazon, Google, all the other companies laid off tens of thousands of employees, right? So it could
Yes.
just have been incompetency. Um, but undoubtedly, corporate responsibility should have been shown and should be shown now, especially given the impact to employees' lives. And this actually also results in low morale at work if the person you're sitting next to, your friend, was fired, right, or your colleague was fired. Um, I feel this. hiring, like I mentioned, can be traced back to companies borrowing capital cheaply, but now capital is expensive. It's at
Hmm.
7% interest rate. So building for the future becomes expensive. Just like, an increased interest rate environments, usually stocks drop. Um, because putting your money into just fixed income assets or the bank becomes more lucrative. Um, Having said that, I'm actually really optimistic about the future. So
Okay.
CPI inflation right now is 2.4% in the US. The Fed made a massive half a percentage point interest cut in September, and I personally expect the Fed to make around 4 quarter point interest rate cuts before the summer. So with interest rates reducing by another 1%, 1.5%, I do expect white collar economy, white collar hiring to rebound. So
Very
I
interesting.
I understand that it's a tale of two economies right now, where blue collar
Hmm.
work like construction,
Yes.
hospitality, restaurants is seeing a massive wage growth driven by labor shortages, and the
Yes.
white collar economy here is like really cool, with graduating classes from MBA colleges not finding jobs with the less than
Yeah.
60% interest placement rate. So I do feel like there's going to be a bridge in the next year or two with interest rates dropping.
Nice. I love the optimism part because that was my next question. And thank you so much for keeping us optimistic and looking forward to the future. But I had a small question. Like you talked about corporate responsibility and enterprise responsibility and the way it is done. Also, what's your take on a certain way this firing was done and how firing should happen in organizations? There were scary stories about, me coming to work and not being able to swipe my card, or opening my laptop and not being able to log in. I mean, does that, and this is ghosting also, this is firing ghosting, I'll have a new name for it now. But I mean, what's your take on that? How is this right? And if it is wrong, how else should it be done? And why do you think companies, did this? There must be some reasoning behind it. And you being in the industry, while all of this was happening at a great scale, I would love to know your thoughts on this.
Yeah, firing has to happen. Like, if you have to lay off people, it has to happen in a very humane manner. I feel like many companies just didn't do it right. People calling people in a large video conference, and just like breaking the news with a poker face, not explaining yourself, not taking responsibility. It's Yeah, it hasn't happened in the best manner, and there is a lot of research around it that I'm sure listeners of this talk can go through. But like, if companies have to do it in a humane manner, prepare thoroughly, review the reasons, be direct, be honest, and most importantly, be compassionate. Uh, you gotta show empathy. You gotta be like, hey, this isn't easy news. I understand the impact it might have on you. You gotta give the people hearing this news, your workers, the time to process it, the time to respond, connect them to HR, connect them to services, connect them to emotional support, uh, provide support for a transition. And for example, give them outplacement tools like, and I'm calling it again, Bright Jump, that help them get another job. Be open to referring them, and of course, wrap that conversation up respectfully, positively, and compassionately.
Yes, I think you put it across very beautifully, because the first time I personally experienced a mass firing happening was when TikTok got banned in India. And they tried to retain the employees for a long time. I think for about 4 to 5 months, they were trying that, hey, we might get again, India might still be receptive to us, so we will not fire the employees. And eventually the thing happened. But yet, like you said, it was done in a very compassionate way. And all the employees had amazing things to say about them. And I think that's the same sentiment across Netflix that we could see. And so, Part one very important question is, and why I read a lot of it on LinkedIn itself. LinkedIn, I feel, started as a job portal. It started as a place where HR professionals are present and people go for their jobs, and slowly it has evolved into something bigger than that. But how important is LinkedIn in the HCM space? from hiring and acquisition to even employer branding and everything. Your views on LinkedIn as such in this industry?
Yeah, good question. So, how important is LinkedIn for the industry and for branding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, when it comes to just the human capital management industry, sorry to break it, Swati, it's not important. There's a lot of hiring that happens outside LinkedIn, like Indeed is probably the biggest job board,
Mm-hmm.
has the most
Yes.
employers, has a lot of tools. Um, and it's very, LinkedIn is basically very easily substitutable from just the industry standpoint. Um, but however, speaking about employees, workers here branding themselves, I think it plays a really good role. It's a great marketplace that brings together both companies. It's actually a 3 or 4 party marketplace. Number one is
Mm-hmm.
that gets is companies. Number two, workers. Number three, recruiters. Uh, and so it's a really good product that they've built. Has traction. It gives employees a very good way to market themselves, brand themselves, for recruiters to reach out to them for jobs. So it provides a lot of value at the end of the day. But again, it's not rocket science to substitute it if it were to fail them out.
Nice, nice. I love to hear your thoughts, and I love the fact how you've put together that yeah, LinkedIn has a different people coming together on the same platform. So it's important. At the same time, there are a lot of substitute products that companies do go to. Uh, so I'll come to my last question, which is a little bit of a debate, which I have had a discussion on with another gentleman, and I thought why not ask you the same question as well. So, Klarna, and you might have heard about them, they made a claim that, hey, we would soon replace Salesforce and Workday with our own AI agent. Now, AI is a buzzword, but I think AI agents is a bigger buzzword in the system these days, right? I mean, there's an AI agent for sales, marketing, and me being in a sales marketing system more, we hear about SDR agents and PDR agents and XYZ. But AI agents managing HR ecosystems, that seems very different, very unique. And so what are your thoughts on this? Because Salesforce and Workdays, like you said, they're big organizations. They're working with big enterprise clients. Do you think they can do it, or someone else can do it, even though they're making the claim? How real is this claim, according to you?
Yeah. So they're claiming that Klarna's claiming they can replace Salesforce and Workday,
Yes.
sales operations and HR with their own AI systems.
Imagine.
Uh, it is, in theory, it's possible. They could build AI agents that read through documentation of Salesforce and Workday, read through APIs, watch Klarna sales teams and HR admins uh, hire and retire workers and log sales leads. They can do this for hundreds and thousands of hours and eventually replace Salesforce and Workday. In theory, it's possible. But it's really hard. Gen AI today, in practically, does provide only provides that front end of taking text inputs. There is no back end. There's limited proof
Hmm.
they can create a back end uh, repository of rules and regulations and business-based logic. There's limited proof that they can build a front-end UI that consists anything more than text, no images or navigations. So I'm very skeptical that they can do this. Google, Amazon, Walmart, every company has tried their hand at building their own HR software. I can't say too much about Salesforce, but I can say more about HR that it's really expensive to build and
Yes.
maintain. So, for example, Workday has, or in this case, Workday has decades of transactional data, millions of employee records, which they build through deep product and functional expertise um, that the client will get here on compliance, understanding payroll, global employment diversity. Um, Clara doesn't have any idea of this field. Their devs and product leaders are not part of this industry. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they can't keep abreast with the trends in the market.
Yes.
So by the time they launch something, it could already have been obsolete. Um, for here you gotta fix your software all the time. You gotta have hands-on product experts fixing your software basically in real time as soon as new rules and regulations come
Absolutely.
about. For example, about 2 years ago, US made it mandatory for salary ranges to be shown in job postings, and
Hmm.
immediately the larger companies created a salary benchmarking product and handed it over to businesses. Nothing that Klarna would be able to do, that too at such a small scale. And lastly, any technical bandwidth of Klarna devs um, will be taken away from the company's main mission to be devoted to this side project.
Yes.
That Klarna would be able to sell less to of its own product to customers. It distracts Klarna from its main company mission, takes leadership bandwidth, um, and it's also cost, right? Human capital management software is basically a commodity at this point in time. 300 $500 range per employee. It's much easier for Klarna just to spend it on workday than build try building something from scratch that it's most likely going to fail at.
Uh, now that I hear your answer, I'm thinking like my marketing brain is going. Maybe that's like a marketing statement wherein they're like, "Oh, we are creating AI agents, which in future can do this." But if in future they can do this, why don't you try them out today? I mean, because they might have as well have added HubSpot and Browser Stack and all the big SaaS companies to their list because it's just a
Correct.
statement. I mean, like they've not given a timeline around it. They've just said that we'll be able to do it, and that gives us as users all the more reason to kind of try their AI agents that, hey, maybe they might have cracked it if that's their vision, that's where they want to go. Because you
Correct.
sell a vision at the end of the day. Very interesting point. Here is my last question for the day. We talked about AI agents, but as of now, in an HR professional, what in what way can an HR professional integrate AI into their day, into their or an HR, I would say, head of department, where all can they integrate AI to make better systems and to kind of optimize their current processes?
Yeah, I think the flavor of AI we have in the market today is generative AI.
Hmm.
So, chatbots. The best way to do it right now would be in an enterprise where you want to self-serve your employees. They have questions about leave, about HR policies, about workplace policies. They send them to a chatbot, and that chatbot answers their
Yes.
questions. Um, and then most of these SaaS providers, HCM providers, have chatbots that help HR admins take decisions, keep them honest, make sure they don't make any errors, and have their own chatbots that do this. But it's yet to be seen how generative AI or other forms of AI, agentic AI in the future, evolve in this space. It's a bit early to say, Swati.
Of course, maybe for the next podcast then. Thank you. Thank you so much, Parth. Really enjoyed
Yeah.
having this conversation with you. And thank you for taking out the time today.
Of course, great chatting, Swati. Thank you.
Thank you.